everybody? Welcome. In this episode, the first part of this episode, I go off on a rant about a quote-unquote pandemic, or not a pandemic, an epidemiological expert on Twitter. He is full of shit. He has been touting predictions and saying all kinds of BS. Meanwhile, he has nothing to show for it. Me and him got in a little Twitter battle. He ended up blocking me, and I'm very proud of this accomplishment. Anyway, you'll want to listen to that. Very entertaining. The second half of the show, I discussed the numbers. We look at the numbers of infections and deaths across the world in certain areas, and I talk about what can we interpret from these statistics, or can we interpret anything at all? So thank you. You're going to enjoy this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Hey everybody, so this first part of the pod, I'm going to talk about uncovering fraud on the coronavirus, and then I'll talk more about numbers later and some evolution about corona. But I'm going to talk about a fraudster. I don't know if he's actually a fraud in terms of what he does for a living or what he does, Anyway, the guy is somebody on Twitter. He goes by Mookjuice, Mookjuice. That's his Twitter handle, at Mookjuice. So this guy is supposedly an epidemiologist. He throws pictures around of him being in hazmat suits in the military, says that he's, at least part of his job, is being in charge of inventory for disease control, so I guess he would order hazmat suits and shit like that. So going back to February, I came back from Taiwan January 31st. By that time, I had been following the developments out of China with coronavirus for about a couple weeks. And when I came back, I was following the advice and the knowledge and the guidelines of people like Nassim Taleb and a guy named Joe Norman and another guy named Yanir Bar-Yam. You can find all these guys on Twitter. These are high-level experts in their fields. But they don't study disease so much as they look at probability, so much as they look at complex systems and things like that. So these guys had warned what was coming out of what was happening in China could be very devastating because we have very limited data. We don't know enough about this disease, and so we can't compare it to other diseases out in current circulation. Therefore, the level of uncertainty is high, and we could have a huge systemic problem like massive death. Right? So when Wuhan coronavirus first started spreading in China, there was so little information known that for all we knew, every day that goes by, we have no idea what's going to happen. We could have seen a death rate of 10%, 15%. We don't know, right? Anyway, fast forward to I get back from Taiwan. There's this guy, Mookjuice, who I found sniping people on Twitter. He's supposedly an epidemiologist, right? Who's sniping people for sending articles about biolabs and, he would use all these terms I looked at the genome of the virus and trying to throw around his credentials. And I was pretty certain, based on the people that I follow that I trust, people like Nassim Taleb have a very impressive track record, have a very deep wisdom and knowledge about certain matters. I trust him and some of these other guys more than I trust this fucking random dude who calls himself an epidemiologist who's sniping everybody for talking about the virus. So I called out this dude back in February, and I was like, why are you downplaying this thing, right? Everybody should be, my position at that point was everybody needs to be prepared because this could be a huge event. So my thing was people should be wearing, this isn't my opinion, I didn't make this up. This was coming from what I was seeing in Asia. Asia has a lot more of a recent history with dealing with these respiratory problems. So I saw what they were doing and I was like, I like this. They immediately started wearing masks. They immediately started being more careful about social distancing immediately. So I'm like, okay, I like this. So everyone should be getting masks and we should be careful about where we go. That was pretty much my position. But like I said, I didn't make up this position. This is what I observed going on in parts of the world that have been affected by highly contagious and deadly respiratory diseases, such as SARS. So this is my take. This guy, Mook Juice, basically responded with, just wash your hands, was saying that the media was overhyping it, that we don't have to worry about it, all this kind of stuff, like, we don't really have to worry about the issues in the West, and was poo-pooing travel restrictions from the beginning, because people like Nassim Taleb and Joe Norman were talking about travel restrictions from China and things of that nature, whereas this guy, Mook Juice, was saying that it's basically dumb, worthless. He was actually, here's the thing, he was actually saying a lot of dumb shit at the time, making a lot of dumb comparisons, but you can't find those anymore. So anyway, the guy tells me, and he's an epidemiologist supposedly, right? So I start getting in a fight with him on Twitter. He reveals his credentials. At the time, this was back in the beginning of February. We don't know much about this virus at the moment. At that time, we just know China shut down. We're starting to see cases pop up, but it looks like it's not so bad at the moment. So after the guy, Mook Juice, reveals his credentials to me, and shows me a picture of him in full hazmat gear with like around a couple military guys, I'm like, okay, this guy might know what he's talking about. I'm gonna back off a little bit. All right, so, because, I can be full of myself, but I can also recognize when I'm out of my league. So I back down. I'm like, okay, what do you recommend? He's like, well, you should wash your hands, blah, blah, blah. But, the kill rate's low, all this stuff. So I did not believe him, but I'm not stupid enough to attack somebody that in a situation like that where I really don't know shit about what's going on. So I'm like, okay, sure, I'll take your ideas. However, I took his advice and continued doing my own thing, which was social distancing. I didn't go out dancing. I started being very cautious about going to the gym. I actually stopped going to the gym a few weeks ago. All this stuff, right? And as this situation has developed, we see Italy is now overtaken with the coronavirus. They shut down the entire country. They have an extremely high death rate relative to the number of confirmed infections, and it looks really bad. Now, will they get through it? I definitely believe the Italians will get through it. I think we'll all get through this. I just think it's going to be rough. So I decide to go back to this guy's timeline and check out what he has to say. Okay, I wanted to see, because this guy, Mook Juice, throughout all of February and beginning of January, he was just sniping at people for talking about the virus, trying to show his credentials about how he knows more than other people about the virus because he's an educated guy. So I went back to see how his predictions played out, because I remembered me and him had a conversation. At that time, nobody... Okay, anyway, so I go to his timeline to check it out. This motherfucker deleted all of his tweets up until about 4 days ago. What a coincidence. As Italy is imploding, this guy has deleted all of his tweets as Spain is about to shut down. This epidemiologist who's been making these predictions and telling everybody how basically stupid they are for, spreading false rumors on the internet, this motherfucker deletes all of his tweets, all of his predictions, all of his advice, everything, up until about 5 days ago. So I call him out on it. I'm like, hey man, what's up with you deleting all your tweets, bro? What's up with you deleting all your tweets about Wuhan coronavirus? because you were pretty damn confident going after everyone a month ago, basically talking about how you know all this shit about the genome. So me and him just got into a big tussle on Twitter, and I just attacked him for it because now we are implementing travel restrictions. Now we are implementing harsh social distancing measures. Now it's revealed that this virus can be transferred through the air because droplets in the air can remain for up to an hour. And this guy is supposed to be an epidemiological expert. So here's the deal. I keep asking him, where are your predictions? Oh, wait a minute. We can't see your predictions, man, because you deleted them all. You deleted all your predictions. So if you go and check out this guy's timeline, Mookjuice, Mookjuice, you will find that he's followed by a couple of relevant people. And you will also find that he has a total of like maybe 100 tweets now because me. But all of his tweets about his predictions are gone. But you know what you'll see? You'll see him talking about how he was correct. How his predictions were correct. And I say to you, he's a fucking fraud. That is a fraud. And he says it's because that he does that all the time, that he always deletes his tweets ever since he got on Twitter. That's fine. I think that's totally fine if someone wants to delete their tweets on Twitter. I don't think anyone should have to do that. However, if you claim to be an expert in a field and you are making predictions and you are giving advice to people that could be life or death, don't delete your motherfucking predictions. Let the world see how those predictions turned out. I'm not saying that everyone's going to be right all the damn time. I understand that. But for this guy to be so on his high horse about being correct and going after people for spreading news about this maybe being leaked from a lab and getting on, I'll tell you what. Had the guy spent time educating people about the dangers of the virus, I probably would have let it slide. I probably wouldn't care. If he told people, hey man, hey everybody, Americans, you guys need to be prepared. There's a dangerous virus heading our way. We're probably going to be fine, but everybody should voluntarily engage in social distancing so we can flatten the curve, so we don't overwhelm our healthcare system, so not as many people die. If he were to say stuff like that, I wouldn't give a damn about his prediction at all. I probably would have, said something about it. I wouldn't really care. But because this dude spent all of his time attacking people for talking about the origin of the virus, instead of educating people about how to deal with the virus and making predictions about things that are just total whack bullshit, that kind of stuff pisses me off. Anyway, so something I've learned. If an expert in a field, economics, financial, business, whatever, can't stand by his predictions, and when I say stand by, I mean won't at least admit that they were wrong or explain how they got something wrong. Bullshit. If an epidemiologist is going to tell you how you should do things, how everybody's overreacting, but then they go and delete all of their predictions, that's a bullshit motherfucker right there. That guy's afraid. That guy is afraid because he's wrong. Anyway, I'll be back after this break. I'm going to work out, and then I'll talk about some numbers, and we'll talk about developments. All right, and we're back. I actually just got up from not a nap, but went to sleep, and we are back. Earlier, I was talking about frauds and a guy named Mookjuice who's supposedly a legitimate epidemiologist. I know the name doesn't sound so good, because it's not a good name for Twitter, but the guy is, I think, and I do believe the guy's an epidemiologist. I just think he's a low-level guy. A couple things I wanted to point out again. He is a he tried to respond to my criticisms of him by sending me information about the flu and flu pandemic and flu protocol. And I want to remind everybody, like, I'm obviously not an expert in this, but one thing people like Nassim Taleb and Joe Norman and other people point out is that these people, well, I don't know if they've pointed this out directly, but a lot of these people are using flu models for this disease. And the bottom line is, we don't know how this disease behaves. We don't know how deadly the disease is. We don't know how it will act if unmitigated in the population. And so there, people using metrics like the flu to determine how people should react could end up being potentially a fatal flaw. And just to reiterate, this guy Mook, who supposedly works for the military, who really knows what's going on with him, but he blocked me on Twitter. I'm very proud of that block, and you should check him out if you can. He will be running around talking about how how all of his predictions were right and correct and all of this. Meanwhile, you won't be able to find any of his predictions. You won't be able to find anything he says because he's full of shit and he deletes all of his predictions. And I get it. Maybe he's in the military and he's supposed to, but he didn't have to delete everything up till all of his predictions. In my opinion, hey, delete most of your shit and keep some of your stuff. How about you keep some of your predictions up so that way people can verify whether you're a true expert, right? Otherwise, there's no way to verify that you're an expert, and you probably aren't one, or you're a fool. He's going to go around talking about how he has been all right all along. He's been right about Italy. He's been right about China. Meanwhile, there's absolutely no proof to back any of that up. So I'll go ahead and stop pouncing on this dude for now. But it's such a sad situation to see where somebody's so full of shit, where they are, proclaiming that they are an expert in the field and yet are hiding all of their credentials, all of their information, and just saying, oh, you should believe me. And yeah, I'm right because I say I'm right. He's so full of shit. Anyway, to move on, let's talk about some numbers today. We've got Italy has 3,500 new cases, and they have 368 new deaths. So Italy, like I've said before, Italy's situation is just tragic. It really is. It's hard to look at. It's hard to hear about. And I don't know why the situation is playing out like this. Spain's situation is also not looking good, but it's not nearly as bad as Italy's. So that's a positive situation. It looks like Spain is on a very similar track to Italy, but it's hard to know why. So I want to go ahead and talk about. Italy has a total of 24,000 cases. They have 20,000 active cases, but they have about 24,700 total cases. They have about 1,800 deaths. So that is high. They are going to be closing in. If they don't stop this soon, Italy's going to be closing in on the same amount of deaths as China. And this just makes me really think that China bullshitted their numbers. It really does. Because China, there were so many reports, strange things coming out of China about the number of people dying. And you see all these videos of people in hazmat suits carrying out tons of dead people. It just doesn't look good. So Spain has 7,845 dead. But they have a total of, they have 7,845 cases total, and they have 292 dead. They added about 100 today, so Spain's moving up in their trajectory pretty quick. In Europe, Germany's looking pretty good. Germany's looking all right, man. Germany only has 11 deaths. They have 5,000 cases, 5,800 cases, and that's positive. So they are doing much better than Italy. They're doing better than France. France has 5,000 cases, but they have 127 dead, added 36 dead today. The United States has 3,700 dead, or cases, 3,700 cases, about 68 dead. And that is, what's interesting is what people are saying is that it doubles every so many days. And you can see that here. I think just a few days ago, we only had about, I think last week we had 20 something dead, 30 dead, and now we're at about 70. So that's why we want to get this shit under control. The UK, they need to be careful because they're going to be on a high trajectory as well. They have 1,300 cases, 35 dead. Netherlands is looking precarious. They have 1,100 cases, but they have 20 dead. The Netherlands situation is interesting because if you listen to Steve Bannon's show, War Room Pandemic, then you will see that Steve Bannon's show has been talking about the Netherlands. And he was talking about how the Netherlands has been struggling with this situation from the beginning, that they have been struggling with ICU beds and hospital capacity from the beginning of this outbreak. And so it'll be interesting to see how this develops. I hope that it doesn't get out of control. I hope that it stays, I hope that they're able to control it. That's all I can say. I hope they're able to control it and keep the level of deaths down. And, that's it. That's all I can say is I hope that's the situation. And I hope that that the people there stay safe, just like I hope the people here stay safe. And, we can go into Asia. South Korea is doing well. South Korea has 75 dead, 8,000 cases. So the thing is that the thing about South Korea, I've said before, is that their number of dead to total cases is going to increase most likely. Of course, I'm not an expert, but they have 7,000 active cases out of all, and they have a total of 8,000 cases they've counted. 1,000 have recovered. So it makes sense that we're going to see more people are probably going to die from South Korea as time goes on, because the majority of the cases they have not recovered. And so there's we're going to see some changes there. Now, let's see. Anything else here I want to touch on? Oh, yeah. So Hong Kong, still doing okay. 149 confirmed cases, 4 deaths. We've got Singapore, 226 total cases, but only 121 active. No deaths. Singapore's kept everybody alive. Great to see. And, this is very interesting. So I want to go ahead on a little tangent here. People keep throwing out analyses on why is it that South Korea and Singapore and Hong Kong, why is Taiwan, why are these countries doing so well? Why are they doing better than other places in other countries? And I'm going to be straight. Also, why is Italy doing so bad? Why is Italy and China doing so badly? And I'm going to say that everyone, I think, needs to hold off on their analyses. Everyone needs to chill out, because I keep seeing people say, oh, it's the age, it's this, it's the containment measures, it's that. Listen, we don't know. We truly don't know. I do believe that containment measures and age and culture, I think all of that plays into this. I think it would be foolish to think that that doesn't play a role. That being said, I also think that we don't understand this is a very complex situation. I don't think, this is one thing that pissed me off about that guy Mook Juice. was this guy was trying to say in the West, we're not going to see the situation as bad as China. Meanwhile, if you look at the data, Italy's situation is going to be worse than China's, is going to be worse than China's in terms of population. And meanwhile, this guy is saying shit like, that Italy was going to be better off than China, but it's not looking good. Now, I do believe China is lying about their numbers, but this is why it's important to pay attention to people like Nassim Taleb who go after models. So Nassim Taleb has been attacking the mathematical models of these some of these experts in these epidemiological experts, because their models are if you change a certain parameter of the mathematical model, you get widely different outcomes. And so it creates this, we're in an area of huge uncertainty, and you can see the uncertainty play out, right? Why is it that Germany has relatively low deaths? France has a much higher death rate than Germany. Meanwhile, South Korea has a much lower death rate than Italy. Like, there's a huge variation around the outcomes of this virus. And I would argue that based on Italy's situation, based on the differences between Italy, between Spain and Germany and France and other places in Asia and Europe, in the Netherlands, based on the various outcomes that we see across various nations, it makes sense that you want to follow certain guidelines about uncertainty as opposed to prediction. To me, this just makes sense. Because if you try to predict how this is going to play out, you could end up with a catastrophe on your hands. So, for example, if you looked at China and you go, okay, so maybe the death rate in China is low, so let's just let it come through our country. Well, what if you end up like Italy? What it looked like to me was Italy was kind of following the lines of, death rate is not so high, it's around 2%, so it'll be okay. I think in Italy, it appeared they were not taking the situation too seriously. Then it ballooned out of control. In the United States, we have not been taking this too seriously. Hopefully, it does not balloon out of control, and we can get back to life as normal. That will be the hope. But you can see there is wide variation between the death statistics and the recovery statistics across the board. And so it is very foolish in my opinion, for people to walk around and assume as though they know the outcome of how this is going to play out in various countries. And I'm seeing more and more naive empiricism that Taleb talks about, like people that are what we would call BS vendors. These are people, BS vendors are people that are pseudoscientific, pseudo-mathematical. These people use correlation and other kinds of bullshit information. Like today, I saw somebody talk about how, I saw someone discuss, a pandemic from the 50s, and I immediately stopped reading their thread when they talked about how the variation in statistics between the death rate and the infection rate in different countries in 1957, like a large percent of the variation could be described by GDP and something else. Like there were two parameters that could describe most of the differences between countries, and I just thought, oh, this is a bullshitter. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about, right? Because what he's doing is he has two variables that are somewhat correlated to outcomes in a particular area, and he's using those to describe why the situation was different. I could be wrong, but I do believe that's what he was saying, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to read the rest of this analysis. It's bullshit. Basically, we are in uncharted territory. We don't know why this virus is behaving why it is in various parts of the world. Hopefully we will find out, but it doesn't appear that we know now. So don't listen to people that are giving advice based on the flu, and don't listen to people who pretend like they are really able to understand these nuances and differences. I think we're going to have to wait and see what happened. Anyway, for now, it looks like the United States may go on lockdown. I hope that's not the case, but it looks like we're going to have to institute some form of more drastic social distancing. Though it looks like people are starting to do more social distancing on their own. I'm noticing that a lot. People are getting more and more aware of the situation. And I want to throw this out there. This is why it's so important to not have fake news. So many people from the beginning were told this is just the flu. And so they were not ready to react sufficiently to the threat. And I don't think we need heavy government hands. Here's my thing. I do believe that I think that the United States public would properly react to any pandemic situation as long as we're properly informed. But we have not been properly informed. People have been saying for weeks and a month or more that this is not a serious situation. Therefore, people are treating it as though it's not serious. So that's why we saw St. Patrick's Day, people were going out drinking. Anyway, that's all I got to say for today. You can follow me on my website, tstuch.com, tstuch.com. You can stop by my YouTube channel, like and subscribe, support Taylor Space Stuch, Taylor Space Stuch, Stuch. You can follow me on Twitter, tstuch1. Thank you very much and have a great day.